Hi, welcome back to another episode of Ex-ante. My name is Alex Dolphin, and today we're going to discuss the case of Bailey versus West. This case was heard in the Rhode Island Supreme Court in the year 1969, and it is a case commonly cited in contract law. Let's go ahead and jump into the facts of the case. So West purchased a horse in Belmont Park, New York. This was meant to be a racehorse. He purchased this horse from Dr. Strauss, was the gentleman's name. He then had arranged for the horse to be delivered to his house, and that horse was then delivered to his horse trainer. West's horse trainer noticed that the horse was lame. He told West about this, and West said, "Well, return the horse. We don't want it then." So West's horse trainer tried to send the horse back to Dr. Strauss. Dr. Strauss's horse trainer rejected it, saying, "No, you can't return it. The horse is yours." So ultimately, West's trainer plopped this horse on a farm, kind of like a stork and a baby, and the farm owner was a man with the last name of Bailey. Bailey took care of this horse for a period of 4 years, and he sent bills to Mr. West saying, like, "Hey, I'm taking care of your horse. You need to pay me for the hay, for the labor, all of these things." West replied back immediately and said, "This actually isn't my horse. I don't own this horse at all." Nevertheless, West, didn't do anything, and nevertheless, Bailey continued to take care of the horse. So Bailey then sold the horse to another third party, and at that point, he filed a lawsuit against West, saying that, "Hey, you owe me all of this money that I put into your horse over these years," which is kind of a conundrum considering he sold West's horse. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the issue and the ruling. So the issue is, more narrowly, is West responsible for the improvements to the horse done by Bailey? And more generally, is an implied contract where one party is essentially volunteering, is that valid? And do we deem that an implied contract in the law? So the ruling was not in favor of Bailey, it was in favor of West. They said that because there was no agreement assented to between the two parties, there was no implied contract between them. And ultimately, Bailey was responsible for all of the money that he did go ahead and spend on the horse. He wasn't happy about this, but the court said that basically when one person is a volunteer, we aren't going to, hold the other party responsible for that volunteer work. The two parties have to assent to an agreement for a contract to be held, even if it is to be an implied contract. So let's go ahead and jump into the ex-ante portion of this. I just first want to flip this a little bit and just talk, what about if Bailey were to have sued Dr. Strauss? In the facts of the case, it shows that Dr. Strauss was actually the owner of the horse, as Bailey signed a bill acknowledging that Dr. Strauss was the owner of the horse. What if Bailey were to have sued Dr. Strauss for recovery? Maybe it would have been a different case, especially considering Bailey signed a document arguing that held that Dr. Strauss was the owner of the horse. Might have had more ground to stand on rather than suing West, who, when he called West denied that he owned the horse. There's a couple incentives generated from this case. The first is that you need to generate clear ownership before you take care of anything. You don't want to just put money and time into something if clear ownership isn't established. And the court is telling you that, make sure you do that at the front end, because we're not going to do that for you later if you come see us in court. Is there a negative incentive generated by this? I was wondering, maybe an incentive to not improve upon property and not make things better. Because if the ownership isn't clear, then are we not going to be able to improve these things? And I think that might be something that Bailey's attorney would have argued, but ultimately Bailey was able to sell the horse. I don't know if Bailey made a profit on the horse, the case doesn't say, but Bailey did sell the horse. So through all of the time and effort that he put into the horse, he did assume ownership, and the law didn't, unrecognize his ability to sell the horse to another third party. So I think that is probably the reward that Bailey saw in this case. We could think of an analogous scenario, one that might tug on your heartstrings a little bit more, and that would be a baby and a stork. So envision Bailey, instead of having a horse plopped on his farm, he has a baby brought by a stork on his front porch, and he takes care of this baby for 5 years. and then ultimately, he figures out, oh, this baby's biological parent is, my ex-coworker from this organization. I'm going to sue them for recovery because I spent tens of thousands of dollars raising their child and they just dropped it off on my porch. Is that, does that tug on our strings of intuition a little bit more? Because it does seem in that type of a scenario, we'd want Bailey to be able to recover. Whereas when it's an animal, it seems a little bit less intuitive. Maybe that's because we value human life higher than we do the life of a horse. But ultimately, I think a fun scenario to consider. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. And